Hi everybody, this is AJ speaking. This is part 6 of my Tesla 4Q 2024 financial review. In this part we're going to talk about cost and margins, and we start right off with average vehicle production cost, which as you can see dropped to an all-time low of $34,700 in the fourth quarter. That's a 4.2% year-on-year decrease from 4Q 2023, where average production cost was $36,200, and the sequential decrease was just under 1%, 0.9%. So Tesla keeps breaking new all-time low production cost records. So in the third quarter, what was most likely the primary driver was the effects of the IRA in the United States. So there are certain government incentives that also affected 4Q, but then the other big effect is the increasing share of China vehicle sales, and it's no secret that Tesla can produce vehicles at a meaningfully lower cost in China compared to the US or Europe. In the first quarter of 2025, and I will discuss this in my upcoming forecast, there will be likely significant changes to this number. Next, we look at the margin impact. On this slide, you can see the auto gross margin excluding leasing and excluding credits. So that's kind of the preferred margin looked at by various Wall Street analysts and various commentators on X, because it takes out the credits component, which a lot of people assume might go away at some point. And then the leasing part, because as I said earlier, the leasing sales kind of create noise in the numbers. So you want to look at this margin. And you can see that Tesla's auto gross margin on this basis dropped to an what I think might be an all-time low. You probably have to go back several years, probably before the 2019 era, and probably we might be talking about 2011, 12 or something like that for a margin for that margin to be lowered. In fact, so it came down quite significantly, as you can see when we compare this, for example, with 4Q 2022. Margin didn't halve, but it's not too far off. So how does this compare to other automakers? It's I would say it's in the lower middle 1/3, if that makes sense. A lot of automakers sort of right in the middle, they have around about 15%, but you always have to be careful when you compare these numbers, because there are some automakers that include R&D expenses in cost of goods sold, and obviously this would be a huge apples to oranges comparison. So when you look at these gross margins, you always have to adjust for that, because Tesla includes R&D expenses in operating expenses, so these are not reflected in this 12.8% number. If Tesla did include R&D expenses in cost of revenue, of course this number would be even lower. So big picture, so auto profitability has become quite low. However, at roughly 100 times PE, Tesla clearly moved on from being valued, and for a long time, like an automaker or hardware maker, and investors increasingly looking forward to Tesla's AI product future, including FSD, including Optimus, and many other AI products which you probably don't even know about yet. And here on the right side, I just put down the formula, how this is being calculated. So you work out the gross profit in the automotive piece of the business. So the sales less the cost, and you divide it by the sales. That gives you the auto gross margin. On this slide, we look at the auto gross margin, including everything. That means including the leasing business, including credits. And also based on that metric, we have seen a significant sequential decline, because one, as we discussed earlier, credit sales came down, so this reduced the margin. Then also leasing sales, even though they increased significantly, but because Tesla pushed leasing sales mostly to vehicle partners, that had actually a positive effect, because Tesla got more upfront payment. If Tesla would have taken on most leasing sales themselves, the drop in margin would have been even more severe. But the key driver of all of this was really um, significant discounts, obviously, subsidized financing rates, plus what also made a meaningful difference was there was less FSD feature release revenue recognition. So there was like I would call it a perfect storm, basically in all fronts. Um, it was a absolutely a perfect storm because on all fronts and even on the comparison, it was like the perfect setup for a major drop sequentially, because in 3Q we had like a perfect positive storm because a lot of things came together that pushed the margin quite high, as you can see from the trend. That Tesla didn't manage to exceed 20% for a long time. 3Q then delivered 20.1%, and there were various one-time effects, and then all these one-time effects they literally reversed or disappeared or absent, and this is then we had this major drop. So now the question is, could you have foreseen this based on consensus estimates, etc.? It looks like nobody really had this on the radar. Why? Because when first third quarter financials were released and new updates came out, including my update, I think most people didn't expect that Tesla would have to go to that degree in terms of discounting, widespread financing deals, leasing deals also. As I think there was some expectation there would be more deferred FSD revenue release, which was not the case, and we talk about it later. And when I talk about deferred revenue release, there are two components. There's one FSD feature release revenue recognition, and then there is just an increase of the deferred revenue related to the performance obligation. We'll talk about this later. There are two components, and the feature release component was substantially less in fourth quarter because there was simply not, compared to the third quarter, not much feature release. And don't confuse this with general performance improvement of FSD. On top of, obviously, credit sales came down. Here you can debate whether it was forecastable. The credit sales, as you've seen earlier, they're quite volatile quarter to quarter, and we have to see how this develops from here. But this is obviously an item that creates meaningful earnings uncertainty. And then lastly, obviously, Tesla's very strong performance in China in terms of volume sales created a loop effect, and it's also not. I think it was also not super clear that China would be outperforming this much the rest of the world and becoming a significantly bigger piece of Tesla's automotive pie. So this was part 6 of my series. In the next part, we will be talking about margins in the energy business. See you in the next one. Bye.